A man may have things pertaining to his work that he likes to check into to progress in that field. But when we get home, it's often easier to relax and do something that's entertaining or that doesn't take quite as much effort or thought. It's even been suggested that when we speak to people about having a Bible study in one of the publications, we not use the word study, but discussion. A Bible discussion, not to frighten them as though it might be too difficult. But none of us would be where we are without study, because what value is a person if he doesn't know anything? Which doctor would you like to have consider your health problem or handle your operation? The one that graduated at the top of the class or the one at the bottom of the class? And since we're dealing with lives of people when we share the truth with them, we need to be able to do it effectively, providing them with accurate knowledge. If we can give them the right answer, the right scripture, we know how effective it is. It's like the eye salve mentioned in Revelation 3:18 that's necessary to help them see the truth and avoid religious blindness. No wonder the Apostle Paul urged at Romans chapter 2 and verse 21, you, however, the one teaching someone else, not teach yourself. And, he was speaking to people who knew quite a bit about the Scriptures. In fact, if you'd like to turn to that, Romans chapter 2, in verse 17, he says, if now you are a Jew in name, and are resting upon law and taking pride in God, and you know His will, and approve of things that are excellent because you're orally instructed out of the law, and you're persuaded that you're a guide to the blind, and a light for those in darkness, a corrector of the unreasonable ones, a teacher of babes, and having the framework of the knowledge and of the truth in the law. So you see, these people knew something about the Bible. They'd been instructed. They were teachers themselves. But still he felt it necessary to say in verse 21, do you, however, the one teaching someone else, not teach yourself? You, the one preaching, do not steal. Do you steal? You, the one saying, do not commit adultery. Do you commit adultery? You, the one expressing abhorrence of the idols, do you rob temples? And you who take pride in law, do you by your transgression of the law dishonor God? So, brothers, these things can happen. They happen to the nation of Israel. They can happen to God's people today. And that's why we have this subject, to study diligently and apply God's Word. We want to be found honoring God, not dishonoring Him, either because of lack of knowledge or lack of application. It's not something that we can't do. I remember years ago, I encouraged one of the brothers to really make an effort to help his young children to prepare for the meetings. They were very showing lack of interest during the meeting. They'd fidget and fume, and he'd have to discipline them, and they were unhappy being there. I said, if you just study with the young boys and help them prepare, I think they'd enjoy the meeting. Well, the very next week, they came to the meeting, and they were sitting there in the front row, and all of those boys were raising their hands. They were trying to vie with one another to see who could comment the most. And afterwards he came up to me, he said, I followed your advice, I helped the boys prepare for the meetings. I said, you didn't have to tell me, we could see it. And so it is that when we work on something, when we prepare, when we make the effort, all of us get enjoyment out of it because we benefit, we can get the depth of God's Word, we can have a share, we know what it's all about. And that's why study is so important to us. In fact, it should be something for all of us to schedule in our lives, because only by such diligent study can we become full-grown in powers of understanding and at the same time avoid the badness and entrapment of the things of the world. And so 1 Corinthians 14:20 says, "Brothers, do not become young children in powers of understanding, but be babes as to badness." Those are the things we don't want to know about. Yet become full-grown in powers of understanding. So Paul saw a need in his day for spiritual progress among the brothers, and we know the same is true today. You visit any congregation of Jehovah's people, and we see a number that are always raising their hands, always prepared, always answering. But you also see a number that rarely answer, that may not be prepared, and that don't have a share. So the point is that we need to prepare ourselves. We need to study diligently. Now, if you'd like to turn to Hebrews chapter 5, verse 12, we notice what the Apostle Paul said about this regarding his day. And he reminded those early Christians, "For indeed, although you ought to be teachers in view of the time, you again need someone to teach you from the beginning the elementary things of the sacred pronouncements of God. And you become such as need milk, not solid food. For everyone that partakes of milk is unacquainted with the word of righteousness, for he is a babe. But solid food belongs to mature people, to those who through use have the perceptive powers trained to distinguish both right and wrong." So we have to ask ourselves the question, would the apostle say that to us in our family? Brothers, you ought to be teachers, but you really need to review some of the elementary things. And you go on to chapter 6 and look at some of the things that he called elementary, and they never have struck me as being all that elementary. So Paul was really expecting a standard of understanding of Christians that is a goal for us to set and work for. And certainly it gives us much happiness when we can be a teacher and help someone else appreciate the truth, come to have a love for Jehovah and for his organization. And don't think it's just for older ones or for someone else. I'm sure you remember that experience from Kenya about the 5-year-old boy that wanted to be a special pioneer, just like another brother that he knew that he really looked up to. His mother was a regular pioneer, so obviously she taught him. But she said, "I don't see how you can be a special pioneer, Jude. You don't even have a Bible study." Well, now here he's just a 5-year-old. And he was discouraged. He says, "Well, what can I do?" His mother said, "Well, why don't you take the Bible story book and see some of your young friends and see if they'd like to study with you." So he went around the neighborhood and he got a little group together, and I don't know if he could read, 5 years old, but he knew the pictures, he knew the stories, and so he'd get all these youngsters together and he'd ask them the questions and review the material. And when he got all done, he'd go back over it to make sure they remembered the points. If they didn't, then he'd review them again. And after a little while, he decided now that was enough. They had the foundation. They should start coming to meetings, so he told them that. And according to the report, 10 are now coming regularly, and 2 are not coming, but the reason they're not coming is because they're too little to come by themselves. So doesn't that show that even young ones can be teachers if they're given the attention and help and effort? It was impressive at our book study last Tuesday night. We had 2 young folks visiting. The boy, I think, was about 10 years of age, and he gave 2 beautiful comments, not from the paragraph, but scriptures relating to the paragraph that really showed that he had some of the truth in his mind, that his parents obviously had studied with him. And neither do we want to think we're too old to study or progress. There was an older sister in Africa who had never learned to read, and she felt very badly because she couldn't teach others. And so one of the pioneer sisters said, well, I'm busy with the pioneer work, but I'll stop by just for 10 minutes on my way to the territory every morning. We'll go over the texts and comments, and maybe that will help you. Well, after 1 year, that sister could read, and she was rejoicing that she could study for herself and teach others also. So, friends, any one of us can progress if we make an effort to study and get an in-depth understanding of God's Word. It's beneficial for us. Not only do we become full-grown in powers of understanding, but we're strengthened to avoid the badness of the world and resist its spirit. We have a brother in the Gilead class who's currently studying, and he related that he was with a hippie group. He was involved in drugs and doing everything bad that the world does. Well, a brother got in touch with him, and he called on him regularly. He learned all about his problems and his difficulties, and he challenged him. He said, now, the Bible will help you if you let it. He said, I know you have problems, but if you want to find a way out of the problems, then try it. Try studying, try applying it, and see if it doesn't help. Well, this young man accepted the challenge. He thought it was worth that much at least. He started making changes in his life. He found that he solved the problems. He accepted the truth, and now he's at Gilead studying for a missionary assignment. Now, that's very similar to what we read here in Ephesians chapter 2, verses 1 to 3. And the Apostle Paul made a similar observation, chapter 2, verses 1 to 3. Furthermore, it's you God made alive, though you were dead in your trespasses and sins, in which you at one time walked according to the system of things of this world, according to the ruler of the authority of the air, the spirit that now operates in the sons of disobedience. Yes, among them we all at one time conducted ourselves in harmony with the desires of our flesh, doing the things willed by the flesh and the thoughts, and we were naturally children of wrath, even as the rest. But he said those things were past. He said, now these Ephesians used to be that way. They followed the desires of the flesh. They were children of wrath, but they were willing to make a change. And that's where study will help any one of us, regardless of our situation in life. The goal we want to have is to become full-grown spiritually, and then, we can enjoy that solid food. As Hebrews said, solid food belongs to us. It's not for the babe, it's not for the one just starting to study, but it's for one growing in spiritual appreciation and understanding. It's just like a good meal gives us renewed energy and strength. Well, it's the same way with spiritual food. When we get a new watchtower, we scan it, we see what's of interest in there, and we start devouring it, the points that perhaps we've talked over with someone in the field or that are of particular interest to us. We look for points that will help us or perhaps help someone that we know that we're calling on. It's just like Jesus pointed out that man lives not by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of the Father. So we need these spiritual things for a good life, a happy life, a life that's pleasing to Jehovah. But what does the solid food consist of? Well, it's the deeper things found in God's Word. It's revealed by His Spirit. But, of course, this solid food isn't of any value if we can't digest it. So we need that spiritual growth. We need to be prepared for it. And that's why we can be so thankful for the direction of the faithful slave class to give us the spiritual food and the understanding at the proper time so we can assimilate it, so we can get the point. For example, recently we discussed 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 9 and 10. Now, verse 9 says, eye has not seen and ear has not heard, neither have there been conceived in the heart of man the things that God has prepared for those who love Him. Well, is this talking about the future, something that we don't know about, blessings to come in the new system? Well, our recent study in the United in Worship book explained we need to examine the context to get the accurate understanding of any scripture. And what does the context show? Whose eyes and ears were without understanding, according to verses 6 to 8? Well, it was the rulers of this system who lacked understanding. They hadn't accepted the truth. They didn't know about it. Otherwise, Paul said they wouldn't have impaled Christ to stop his preaching work. In fact, verse 10 says, it is to us God has revealed these sacred secrets through his Spirit. For the Spirit searches into all things, even the deep things of God. So with God's help, with his Spirit, we can understand these deep things. And so we have good reason then when we have a problem, we need help. Of course, there's all kinds of ways to study. I know all of us, myself included, oftentimes we prepare for book study. What do? We read through the material, we mark it, maybe look up the scriptures, time permitting. But there's much more that we can do when our circumstances permit, and it's good to schedule time for that, to study in depth. Now, study is defined as the application of the mental faculties to the acquisition of knowledge and includes careful and extended consideration. For example, in the United in Worship book, we had a question, if we realize that we've committed a sin, what should we do about it and why? Well, you can find the general answer as you read through the paragraph, and it shows the need for genuine repentance, perhaps getting help from the elders, recognizing the wrongness of what was done, not to repeat it, and so on. But then we notice that James 5, verses 13 to 16 was mentioned. And it talks about calling the older men of the congregation to let them pray over this sick one, greasing him with oil in the name of Jehovah, and the prayer of faith will make the indisposed one well. Well, we might just read that and say, I get the point. But then if we examine it and give it consideration, we'll often find out that we get more out of it. For example, what about this greasing with oil? Are the elders supposed to carry oil with them on shepherding calls? Is that what we understand from that scripture? Well, not if we refer to the marginal reference in the Bible in Psalm 141, verse 5. And here it says, should the righteous one strike me, it would be a loving kindness. Should he reprove me, it would be oil upon the head. So you see, it's not literal, but refers to counsel and reproof that can have a spiritually healing quality along with prayer. Or if we check the Society's index, we find a reference saying, the reading of the Bible to the sick one will greatly encourage him, like the rubbing in of soothing literal oil. So it's a simile, it's a comparison, you see. So now we've not just been reading the material, but we've been doing more in our study time. We've been meditating about it. We've been asking ourselves questions to see if we really get the sense, and then doing some research, and that's a fine thing as our time permits. However, what we need from our study is not just understanding of prophecy or deep spiritual truth, but also the counsel, the guidance that Jehovah gives us, and then applying what we learn. You see, that Gilead student solved his problems. He moved ahead spiritually. But we may know brothers or sisters or young ones in the congregations who have problems right now. They have problems getting along, maybe questionable conduct at times, problems with drinking, jealousy, marriage isn't going smoothly. And of course, it's true, the scripture says, there's no one who doesn't sin, no, not one. So we all fall short at times. But the question is, which way are we headed? Deeper and deeper into those problems, or gradually pulling away from them because of the application of God's Word. We know how easy it is to read the Scriptures or hear it talk and wish someone else could hear it to get the point. But the question is, do we get the point when it applies to us? Do we apply it no matter how much it may pinch? 1 Peter 4:1, it says we should arm ourselves with the same mental disposition as Christ so that we live not for the desires of the flesh but for God's will. So the Scripture is really saying, let's do it Jehovah's way, not our way, not the way we may be inclined, that fleshly way, you see, but Jehovah's way. Verse 3 says, not continuing to run with those of the world in acts of loose conduct, excessive wine, and so on. So the point here is, are we not only reading and studying the Scriptures, are we applying it? Are we doing it in our lives? Because that's how we benefit. If our study helps us see such things, then we're going to see God's blessing in our lives. We'll learn what it means to be a spiritual person, to grasp the deeper things of God's Word. A physical man, can't do that. He's like those rulers. Their eyes can't see, their ears can't perceive them. So 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 11 says, no one has come to know the things of God except the Spirit of God. So we have to know His Word. We have to let His Spirit motivate us. Verse 14 says, a physical man does not receive the things of the Spirit of God because they're foolishness to him, and he cannot get to know them because they're examined spiritually. And that's why we're so appreciative of the channel, the direction, the publication that Jehovah gives us through His organization. And we want to reach toward that goal of becoming a spiritual person. It comes gradually. It's not a matter of being one or not being one, but of putting on the new personality, making the effort, applying what we learn, and then Jehovah's going to give us a blessing. In the material that was prepared for this special assembly day, the words of Jesus, the illustration in Matthew 13, were referred to. You might like to turn to that, because this is a very nice illustration, starting with verse 3 about the sower, and explaining why the truth affects people in various ways. It tells of a sower who went out to sow, and in verse 4 it says, and as he was sowing, some seeds fell alongside the road, and the birds came and ate them up. Others fell upon the rocky places where they didn't have much soil, and at once they sprang up because of not having depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched. Because of not having root, they withered. Others too fell among the thorns, and the thorns came up and choked them. Still others fell upon the fine soil, and they began to yield fruit. This one 100-fold, that one 60, the other 30. Let him that has ears listen. Well, you read that part of the Scripture, Jesus' illustration, and you say, well, that might be of interest to a farmer, so he'd know where to plant the seed. But that wasn't why Jesus gave the illustration. And that's why he said, let him that has ears listen, the one that wants the spiritual application of it. And so to his disciples he said in verse 11, to you it is granted to understand the sacred secrets of the kingdom of the heavens, but to those people it is not granted. But, of course, not all have the desire to learn. Not all have the right heart. So Jesus said that's why he spoke in an illustration. Some wouldn't get the sense of it. But what is the sense? Well, verse 19 tells us that the seed is the word of the kingdom. Satan, the wicked one, is snatching away what's been sown, as it were, alongside the road. Even though it may reach the heart, Satan is trying to dislodge it, to discourage the person with propaganda, objections, and so on. But what about these other seeds that are planted? Well, as we go on in verses 20 through 23, he says, as for the one sown upon the rocky places, this is the one hearing the word and at once accepting it with joy. Yet he has no root in himself, but continues for a time, and after tribulation or persecution has arisen on account of the word, he is at once stumbled. As for the one sown among the thorns, this is the one hearing the word, but the anxiety of this system of things and the deceptive power of riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. As for the one sown upon the fine soil, this is the one hearing the word and getting the sense of it, who really does bear fruit and produces this one 100-fold, that one 60, and the other 30. Well, you can see then why the apostles wanted to know more, and that's why Jesus told them in verse 16, happy are your eyes because they behold, and your ears because they hear. And so it is with us. We really dig into God's word to get the understanding. We don't want to be like so many in the field. Jesus described them in verse 15, and you'd think it applied to some of the territories today when he said, the heart of this people has grown unreceptive, and with their ears they have heard without response. So the point is then, they don't get it into the heart, they don't get healed, their problems aren't solved. But don't we see the application of this parable in our ministry today? Even in our own case, Satan would like to keep the truth from us. If we never read or study the Bible, he'll try to snatch away the things we've learned. He doesn't want to let this good word of the kingdom sink down in a person's heart if he can stop it. He wants to keep people in darkness. He has the clergy telling the people, forget the Bible. It's just a book of myths written by men, not really by God. He promotes nationalism to keep mankind from appreciating what the kingdom will do. He doesn't want us to get the sense or the meaning of God's word. Others accept the truth with joy, but it doesn't have root. They don't really make it their own. When a little trouble comes along, they get discouraged and at once are stumbled. But others like what they hear. They're just so busy they let the power of riches choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. Well, we're in a wicked, selfish, unloving system. We can't beat it. It's going to go down. So we don't want to be choked spiritually. Instead, we want to keep the kingdom interest first. Well, I'd like to consider with you this illustration just a little bit further, though. Remember how the United in Worship book recommended when we read the Bible we consider 5 points. What the scriptures tell about Jehovah as a person, how it relates to the overall theme of the Bible, how the context affects the meaning, how it should affect your life, and how you can use it to help others. What about this scripture? Verse 23 shows something about Jehovah, because it describes his fine soil, those bearing fruit according to their circumstances, whether 100-fold or 60-fold or 30-fold. So, Jehovah is compassionate. He's understanding. He knows what we can do, and he doesn't ask something that we can't do. Does it relate to the kingdom theme? Yes. Verse 19 calls it the word of the kingdom. That's what Satan wants to stop from going out. That's what we have the privilege of sharing. So it does relate, you see. Does the context help us? Yes, even Jesus' disciples asked why he spoke in illustrations in verse 10. And he explained that not all would come to understand the sacred secrets of the kingdom, but the context, as we've considered in verses 18 to 23, gives the meaning of the illustration. Does it affect our lives? Well, brothers, it should, because it warns us of Satan's efforts to snatch away what is sown in our hearts. It also makes us examine, doesn't it, how much fruitage are we producing in the kingdom interest? Is it really what Jehovah might expect of us, or could we do more? And finally, can we use it to help others? Yes, it's a good parable to discuss with interested ones, to show the obstacles that might confront them in learning the truth, and then to encourage them to be like that fine soil, to bear fine fruitage. So you can see the society has helped us in many ways in our studies. We not only have the Aid to Bible Understanding with all its spiritual riches, but now the Watchtower Publication Index, 1930 to 1985, all gathered together there, research so we can put our finger right on the best, most helpful reference. So let's use these things for research. Let's dig down to find and understand these spiritual truths. Proverbs 2:4 says we want to seek for understanding as for hid treasures. If we do that, we'll come to have the fear of Jehovah and the very knowledge of God. And wasn't that really what the Ethiopian eunuch was doing in Acts chapter 8? He was studying that account in Isaiah 53. He was searching for understanding. He asked for help. He applied what he learned, and then he acted on it. He applied it. You see, he said, what prevents me from being baptized? So the point is that, number one, we want to study, but number two, we need to apply it. Maybe it'll help to think about what that word study, the letters stand for. S for salvation. Study as though your life depends on it, because really it does. T is for teacher. Study to be a fine teacher of God's Word, teaching our Bible students to observe all the commandments and be a disciple of Christ. U for understanding, the height, the depth, the breadth, full meaning of Jehovah's Word, the direction from His organization. D, of course, that's for the devil, isn't it? Great to study with your wife and children, single, to progress spiritually as a spiritual person, to share with the congregation your good comments, and finally to show the depth of your love and devotion to Jehovah. So, in all these ways, through study, we can be like the man the psalmist spoke about at Psalm 1, verses 3 and 6. He'll certainly become like a tree planted by streams of water that gives its own fruit in its season, and the foliage of which does not wither. Everything he does will succeed. Yes, we can benefit if we study Jehovah's Word and put it to work. We want to do as 2 Timothy 2:15 says, do your utmost to present yourself approved to God, a workman with nothing to be ashamed of, handling the word of truth aright. Yes, friends, let's study diligently and apply God's Word.